Hey, it's Annie. Welcome to Rise Up and Heal. On today's podcast, I have the beautiful RJ with me, who is the author of Girl That Got Out. RJ has an amazing story, which I am so absolutely thrilled that she gets to share with you today. So, RJ, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me today. Can you please share your story and especially talk about like Girl That Got Out and how your book, Girl That Got Out, came to be?
Yes, absolutely. Hello, everyone. This is RJ. Thank you for having me. Yes, my story begins on a day like pretty much any other day for everybody. It's a typical day. You're getting up ready for work, you're getting your kid ready for school, just sipping my coffee. And I took my son to the school bus, and I came back, and there was a man waiting for me at the bottom of my steps, and it was an ex-boyfriend. I had broken up with him about 6 months prior. We dated on and off for about a year. I hadn't had any contact with him, so it was kind of a surprise to see him standing there. And he said, "Hey, can I talk to you? I'm just going through some things." And I said, "Sure, yeah, come on in." So he came in while we had breakfast. We had a good conversation, and then it was time for me to get ready for work. So I told him I had to, get ready, and he needed to leave. And he said, "No, I'm not going anywhere." And I was like, "Yeah, I have to go." And he was like, "No, you're not going anywhere." And he had a backpack with him, and he pulled out of the backpack a knife and a can of mace. And I realized that he was serious. He wasn't joking.
Yeah.
But I wasn't really sure how to react. It caught me off guard, obviously. And so I just kind of laughed nervously, and I was like, "Hey, um, very funny, but for real, like we need to go." But like, I was just kind of trying to talk while I was like looking at the door because he was between me and the door. So I heard in my head, I was just like, you gotta run, like you gotta get out before he catches you. So I ran to the door. I got to the door. Um, I got it open, and then he caught me, and I started screaming for help. But nobody heard. And we were just kind of stuck in the struggle where I was flailing to get out the door. He was trying to pull me back in and shut the door at the same time. He sprayed me with the mace, so I couldn't see. I was blind. And then he started punching me in the top of the head with a knife handle. And I kept on flailing. I kept on fighting. Um, but then he held the knife against my throat, and I stopped immediately. And he dragged me back in the house and locked the door. He took me in, and we sat down on the couch, and I could kind of see. I was obviously very disoriented and crying. And he zip tied my hands behind my back, and then he zip tied my ankles together. And that was how
Oh,
that morning began. It was um
oh my goodness.
So we had a break kind of there. I was just trying to get my thoughts together, get my wits together as to like what on earth is going on. He went into the bathroom during our struggle. His face had got nicked with a knife, so he was bleeding. So he went into the bathroom to just kind of check it out. So I was alone, and I sat there and I stared out the window, and I'm thinking to myself, this is one of those stories you hear about the crazy boyfriend that, killed her, killed the dog, burnt the house down, and I was just like, I'm going to be one of those girls in the news that you're going to hear about. And it was very surreal feeling to be thinking that, and everything that I wanted to do in my life was running through my head. And I was like, but I haven't done this yet. And my son, I was like, who's going to get him a hockey helmet if I die? Just really like kind of small things, but things that you don't realize are so important to you until you're in that moment. Um, so I was just desperately thinking about how to get out. I was like, I got to get out of here. And I just really felt in my heart that even if I did die, I was not going to die alone. Um, that there was a peace that came over me. There was a peace that calmed me down, and that I could face this with dignity. Um, and obviously, it wasn't going to get me anywhere being a panicky mess. So I calmed down. And he came back out and sat down, and we had a conversation about what was to commence. He said that he wanted to stay with me for 3 days and just kind of pretend that we were a couple, that we were still in love. And then after the 3 days, that he was going to kill me and he was going to kill himself. And then he had a bomb, which he pulled out and showed me,
Oh,
um, for the police, because he figured that the police would be surrounding the house by that time. So he was going to take everybody out. Um, he said that he knew how to torture me and keep me alive at the same time. So we were just going to kind of go through this really weird weekend of pretending to be a couple and torture, and it was yeah, it was very daunting. He said that he felt that, I had broken his heart and that I was too evil to live. And um
wow.
so he could not let me live. He was letting my son live because he was innocent and he didn't want him involved. But um he yeah, he did not want me to go on. So that was the plan. During this talk, he had become friendly, and made some advances. And so I knew what he wanted. And I just said, hey, if you release my hands, that would give me more mobility, like I could do more. And so he agreed to that. And so I was slowly becoming a little more free, not inhibited. But he kept my ankles together, so I wasn't running anywhere. Um, but he did his thing, and then afterwards he was like, "We're, going to go to the bathroom, and you need to get cleaned up." He's like, "Take a shower," because I was just covered in mace, and then I was covered in blood from him, and it was just and yeah, he had me crawl across the floor because he refused to undo my ankles. So
Wow.
um so I took a shower, and of course, if anybody knows, I don't know if anybody's ever been sprayed with mace before, but it burns when water hits it really bad. So I was crying in the shower because it was just all over my eyes and it was burning. And he sat outside with a knife, and he was very irritated that I was crying. It bothered him. Um, so he said, get out. And I suggested, I was like, hey, I said, why don't I play the piano for you? Because he always liked to listen to me play the piano and sing. It was kind of our thing. And he said, yeah, that would be fine. So I'm thinking this will calm him down. This will bring him to a calm state. So um, we went in, sat down, and I played and I just sang every song I could think of. I made up songs about being lost and just hopeless, and just trying to kind of get through to him and trying to calm him down. He listened for a while, just he was real quiet. This whole time he had the knife in his hand, so there was just no getting around that. Like,
Yeah.
you just had to keep him calm.
Wow.
Um, and then he was like, okay, you're done playing. Let's go into the living room. And we went into the living room. Now, to give you kind of the layout of the house, the door was in the kitchen. And then you went from the kitchen to the living room. So you could see the door, but
Oh,
you couldn't get in. Yeah.
yeah.
So we went back to the living room. And by this time he had undone my legs for the shower. When I took a shower, he let my legs go. So I was not zip tied at all at this point. Um, and he started crying, and he said, I don't really want to do this to you. I don't want to be doing this. And I said, if you just let me go, it's fine. I won't say anything to anybody. Like, you can just go, and it's okay. And he was like, no. And he was just kind of had this internal struggle going on. Like, his face was changing, and I just wasn't sure where he was at. And then all of a sudden he just went cold, and his face went cold, and he just stopped crying, and he just stared at me, and he was like, we're done. We're moving into phase two. And I was like, okay. He said, I'm going to go outside and get your cell phone, because it had gotten thrown out during the initial struggle. He said, I'm going to go outside and get your cell phone and bring it back in, and I'm going to see who you've been talking to and who your friends are, and things like that. So he zip tied me again to the radiator so that I couldn't go anywhere. He zip tied my wrist to the radiator. He went outside, got my phone, came back in, and I was desperately thinking, I was trying to get out of it, but zip ties are just almost impossible to get out of. If you have something tiny, you can get it in the teeth and you can push it down. But if you don't, you're you're
Yeah.
screwed. Um, so he was going through my phone, and I was like, hey, since we're going to be here for a couple of days, I was like, the kitchen's a mess. There's spray, there's blood everywhere. I said, why don't I just go in there and just clean it up? Like, so that it'll be like a nice house for us to be in for a couple of days. And he was kind of like hesitant about it, but then he was like, yeah, he's like, okay. He's like, you can't do anything. And so he came over and he let me go. And I went out to the kitchen. So while I was scrubbing, I would tap the door handle and he would jump up or he would look and he would just be like, and he would realize I wasn't doing anything and he would go back to like looking at my phone. So I just kept tapping the door handle so he would get used to like hearing that sound. And then I heard him say, oh, I found something good. And I grabbed the door handle and I grabbed the lock and I ran out.
Wow.
And I ran as fast as I could. There was a little mom and pop store across the street. So I ran in there and I ran up to the clerk and I was like, you have to hide me. I said, there's a man trying to kill me. He's chasing me. And the poor kid he was young and he was, he didn't know what to do. Um, but they hid me in the back closet. And I curled up on the floor back there and I waited for the police to arrive. They came with a bomb squad and helicopters. They broke my windows in and he was gone. So he had run out after me. He had thrown the bomb in the hedges outside of the mom and pop store. So he was right behind me. He was not far. And then he had taken off. And so I went into hiding at a women's shelter for the night because we didn't know where he was at. Um, and then they found him around 4 a.m. that morning. They came and told me they'd found him about an hour and a half away and taken him in. So,
Oh, I don't even know where to begin with this story. Like it's just the traumatic, like the shock of that. And then do you know like how like even for you to to come up with the thought of how about I clean up the kitchen and then to be like knocking, I'm just going to keep tapping the door handle and knocking the door handle so he gets used to that noise. I mean, I don't think I would have ever thought of that, but how ingenious that you did think of that. Like what made you think of like what made you think of that?
I mean, I don't know if I've watched enough crime movies or what. I don't know. It was surprise. The whole experience was unique, I guess, because you always theorize what you're gonna do when somebody breaks in your home. Like you always kind of think you know what you're gonna do, and I love MMA and I love boxing, and I always thought if somebody tried to do that, I'm just gonna knock them out. Like it's not even gonna be a problem. So to be overpowered and that was very shocking to me. I just didn't think that would be a thing for me. Um, and to be incapacitated, not be able to move, not be able to run, just be completely powerless was just weird. So where those ideas came from, I don't know. It's just you desperately want to survive. That's all you want. You just want to get out. And so you're just playing this giant chess game and you're trying to outmaneuver him. So you're playing off of those emotions and you're trying to yeah, you're just trying to come up with any idea to be not be tied up and not be locked up somewhere. Like you're just the freer you are, the better chance you have of getting an escape.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And what was his like? Did he say why the 3 days? I mean, thank goodness that his plan
Yeah.
was 3 days because otherwise it could have been instantaneous and we definitely wouldn't
Yeah.
be having this conversation. So, what was the
Yeah.
significance with the 3 days?
I honestly don't know. I don't know what the
Okay.
3 days is. If he did say it, I don't remember. He picked the day because the date was 10/11/12. So he picked
Right.
the exact day and he had sat outside my apartment for probably 4 weeks, watching me and watching my habits and where I was. He knew the addresses of all my family members. He had done his research. It was very premeditated and very well thought out, but not, I don't know why the 3 days. And I feel like the 3 days probably was the saving grace for real, like you said, because that gave us time to
Yeah.
I think it was just he wanted, I think it was that mixture of wanting to spend time with me one last time and also wanting me to pay for how I made him feel. So I think that
Yeah.
was just, yeah.
Oh, oh my gosh. Like, thank goodness that you were able to get out. Thank goodness that you were able to run across to that store and that you had
Yeah,
people there that they could hide you. So he's been caught. So what
right.
what happened there? Like what I'm guessing like with the charges and stuff like that, he dropped the backpack in your yard. So can you now walk us through like what
Yep.
happened afterwards?
Yep. So they brought him in. He was acting like he was insane. He was mumbling, he wouldn't talk. The police told me this afterwards that he pleaded insanity, that he had lost his mind. Um he would know little things at the police station, like where they had left his backpack, and he would tell them what the code was for the door. He was very um not, I mean, insane, but not insane at
Yeah,
the
yeah, to
same
be,
time.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So he had hid the bomb in the hedges, and about a year later we went to trial. He wanted a trial, so I had to get up and testify, and it was
Oh,
we were the only ones there that day, so it was, my word against his on what had happened. But they had the evidence. They collected really good evidence afterwards. Probably half of my stuff was gone. I never recovered it.
yeah, wow.
um, but he had said that we just had an argument. That was his case, was that he'd just come over, we'd had an argument, it gone south, and it was no big deal. Um, but the judge asked him, he's like, "Would you always take a bomb to people's houses whenever you're going to visit them?"
Yeah,
So that was the saving grace for the case, really, because that was evidence that everything was premeditated, that he had planned it out. So he did go away for a while. He's gone for a while because of all the premeditation.
yeah.
So,
And thank goodness too, like he did leave that backpack and that behind, that they were able
mhm,
to get that, because it would very much become, like you said, a case of he said, she said, like trying to
right.
prove everything that you've gone through. And I'm not saying that you wouldn't have been believed, but when it comes
But
down,
you don't know.
especially
Yeah.
especially to the court side of stuff, they have to hear everything, and it's trying to decipher where the truth in that really lays. So thank God you are absolutely here with us, and that and that your son was not involved
Yeah.
at the time. That would have been really hard. So for you, because I can't even begin to imagine the healing journey and the process that you have been on for yourself. So, can you talk to us about now, like how you, with your healing, because you have written your book, Girl That Got Out, and if you can, yeah, share some more of that with us, please.
Yeah. So right away, and I feel like this is probably true for a lot of people that experience a traumatic event, any kind of trauma. You're kind of on an adrenaline high for, a couple weeks to about a month, where you almost feel invincible because you made it. You survived, you're good, like you know you're not one of those stories, you did it, like it's good. And then all of a sudden you just crash, and I crashed really hard. I wasn't able to wrap my mind around why he wanted to kill me, why it was so severe like that. And also just safety was it was a primal response for me. Everything was unsafe, the world was unsafe, crowds were unsafe, unknown places were unsafe. So I really just didn't want to go around those, anything like that. I'm a very social person, and I was a huge social butterfly before this happened. So I love people and I love experiences, and I'm just not afraid of people at all. Um, and that just flip-flopped. It changed for me.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of nights in my car. I would just go sleep in my car. I would lock the door and
Wow.
sleep in there, because the close space and the ability to lock the doors made me feel safe. And sometimes that was just it. That was the only way I could sleep. So yeah, the initial emotions. of trauma for the first several years are just really primal. I would use that word primal because you are just responding, you're reacting, you're figuring it out. You don't even know what you're figuring out. You don't know how you're feeling. You're falling apart all the time. Some people are helpful and a lot of people are not because they don't know how to handle you. People don't know how
Yeah.
to fix it. They don't know how to fix your brain, and your brain's not really fixable at that time. You're just kind of
Yeah.
um so that first section that I wrote about is more with learning how to sit with your emotions. The first 6 points, identifying your triggers, like knowing what triggers you. I know that fall is a time of year I'm triggered, so I will not have as many engagements during that time of year. I'll be really sensitive to, like, if I start feeling anxious or depressed, I know I'm like, this is what it is. Sit down and cry, like have a good cry,
Yeah.
and then get
So
up and keep on
important.
going.
Yeah.
But yeah, identifying it, and then getting away from the area, getting away from where it happened. I moved a lot. Not everybody can do that, but I was able to move and live in different places, and that helped a lot. Um, Adrenaline is a really big one, and it could just be like running. For me, I got a job at a horse farm, which was strictly just because I needed a job and it
Yeah.
was available. But the horses were crazy. They're just absolutely crazy. And for somebody who doesn't know how to handle them, I got bit and kicked a good bit. So there's that adrenaline where you have to 100% pay attention and focus. And that was immensely healing for my mind because I couldn't think about anything else in those moments. And that, I feel like, is probably one of the most crucial components for anybody. Find something that your mind can just be completely focused on, because it's almost like letting your mind sleep. It gives your mind a break from all the just all the memories, the panic attacks.
Well, because you tend to find that you keep playing this continual loop. And then
Yes.
really, like, I don't know about you, but potentially then like really analyzing the situation and analyzing the conversations and having that sort of continually
Yeah.
go through. And I think, that's such an important part, like you said, of the healing process, is really finding something that you can focus on that is going to give yourself a break, because it really is, you are so much in your head, like it's just, yeah. And I can
Yeah.
only, like, especially with everything that you've gone through. So even for you, like, I mean, you've had to go to trial, so you've had to face him there. Like, I can't even begin to imagine just the level of anxiety and the emotions that you felt there. But then you had to then come basically after, I guess, after he was caught and after you'd spent some time in that women's shelter, you had to go back into that place where you were living. Like, that
Yeah.
would have been extremely difficult. Like, had you stayed there? Did you decide to stay there for a while, or you basically
I
were like,
stayed there one night and I said, you got to get back on this horse or else you're not going to do it. Like, you have to go back to the apartment. I had somebody watch my son so that I could just be there alone. And I went there and I cleaned everything up, and I just tried to muscle through it, to work through it. And like I said right away, you are kind of on an adrenaline high where it's
yeah,
hard, but you're still in the moment. You're still kind of traumatizing.
yeah, yeah.
Like
Well,
it's
you're
it's still
probably in
alive. Like it's a
shock.
thing.
Like, yeah,
Yeah. Like you're just kind of whatever. But uh yeah, like I said, like a couple weeks after living there was really, really hard. And like I said, I would go sleep in my car and stuff because
yeah.
it doesn't make sense. Like, your brain after trauma doesn't ever make sense. It's just
Mhm.
kind of backwards. But to you, it feels safe, or it feels good. And so that's what you do. It's just, like I said, it's an extremely primal response. Um, and like, nightmares were every night. Like, I never slept normal. Like, he was either chasing me, or I was trying to out muscle him. And it was just constant. It was different places, different scenarios, but it was always, 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 and um he was constantly trying to kill me, like always.
Yeah, yeah,
So you're just exhausted from that
yeah.
constant running. And even like when we were in court and I had to walk past him, in my head he was going to jump up and stab me. Like I was like, he's going to kill me, which was ludicrous because there were guards there, there's people there, like nothing's going to happen, but your brain can't register that. um when you're stuck in fight or flight, your brain's just not registering safety. It just thinks everything is dangerous.
Well, absolutely, because it's trying to
Yeah.
protect you and keep you safe. And I mean, yeah, I think that would probably, to a certain degree, as much as, and like you said, you know that there are all these guards and stuff like that. But I think most people would probably absolutely be concerned that
Yeah.
he would absolutely, or he or she could absolutely do that. So it would have just been. Yeah. Did he show like any remorse or anything like that? Because that I think is also the interesting thing too, that you were saying how he was going, like the time frame that you two were together, that he was like one person and then he was a different person and then he was acting insane in front of the police, yet he was very switched on as to knowing the codes to get in and where his bag was, this, that, and the other. So like, what was he like for you at the trial? Like, did he show any remorse, or there was actually like no communication? Because I mean, for you to have to sit there and basically he's opposite you, like
Yeah.
I just, yeah, I'm trying to process this. Like, how did you do this? Like, how did you?
Yeah. He Before we went to trial, you have to meet with obviously meet with the lawyers and the witness protection people and all that stuff. You meet with them in a little office. And while we were there, he had a public defender, and the public defender came in and he was like, I'm not really supposed to give messages, but he's like, he wanted me to tell you that he still loves you.
Right.
And
Okay.
then of course, like, they were like, get out, don't like, what are you saying, um and then during the trial, um, he was acting insane again. So he pulled that card back out. And so he would clap. He started clapping at parts, where I said like he did what he did, and he would just start clapping and be like, that's great, that's a great story, and just like disruptive. He was just super disruptive, making noises the whole time. The judge had to tell him to be quiet, like repeatedly. Like he was like, just, stop. And then he fainted. He
Oh,
fainted. I don't know if he really fainted or if he was just he was trying to get it continued. So we had to stop everything. Everybody had to get out of the jury box, and they took him in the back and did an assessment of him. And then, so all this time's going by, and then they bring him back out. So it just drug on. He did it twice. He fainted twice. Um, so he was really making a big show out of it. Like he was just very um yeah. He
no.
Yeah, he was not it was not there was no remorse. There was no remorse. It was, I was wrong. Like he was definitely trying to reiterate that he had done nothing wrong, and yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And that's what the most amazing thing is, I think, is that, I mean, especially with everything that you've gone through, that it's still your fault. I mean, none of that was your fault in any way,
right.
shape, or form. Like,
And that's hard because I did wrestle with that. I did
yeah,
surprisingly wrestle with that afterwards, that feeling that, maybe if I had treated him nicer when we were dating, like if I had done something different when we were dating, or if I hadn't broke up with him, or I am a very opinionated person, so I'm very truthful. I'll tell you, how I feel. And I was thinking, I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have said how I felt. Like, just like you do think about like, how did this get to this, like to this
yeah,
moment.
yeah,
And I had somebody tell me that um how somebody responds to you is not your fault. Like your actions might be wrong, but how the other person responds to your actions, that's not on you, that's on them.
yeah,
And that's their choice to respond that way. And that was very freeing to me because like I said, I just really wrestled with that. Maybe I had treated him poorly or something. And
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 I,
just to realize that other people, other relationships go through that, and that doesn't happen.
yeah,
They just
no,
move on. They go
yeah,
be with somebody else or something.
absolutely, yes.
They don't just be
Yeah.
obsessed. Like he was completely obsessed.
And had he shown, like, were there red flags, do you feel like, because you said you were dating this person like on and
Yeah.
off for a year. So now that you look back, like, could you see that there were potentially red flags in the relationship, or he kept stuff pretty well hidden? I mean, because I don't think anybody would be able to forecast that, that this
Yeah.
situation was absolutely going to happen.
Right. You never think that this would happen. But the red flags are pretty much what led me to break up with him. So he had a very explosive temper
Right.
where he was not physically abusive, but he would just snap over dumb things, just, how I was driving or something. He would just lose his mind, just,
Mm.
flip out. And I think that was the biggest reason why I broke up with him, because I didn't want explosive anger in my life. It wasn't a
No.
thing.
Yeah.
Um and we were out at one point together, and we had an argument, and I had a retired psychologist come over to me, and he said, I don't know you and I don't know him. He's like, but I've seen a lot of people, and I'm telling you, that man's going to try to kill you one day.
Oh my God.
um so people, psychologists saw it, other people were kind of picking up.
Yeah.
He was extremely, extremely obsessive. So, if we had had an argument and I didn't respond to his phone call, he would call me 100 times in like 2 minutes, just ring, 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 ring constantly. He would show up places, he would show up at the grocery store if I was grocery shopping, just constantly. After we had broke up for a little while, he would call me with different accents from different phone numbers, and he would pretend to be somebody else, and I would be like, what are you doing? So he was very obsessive, like extremely obsessive, that I was his, and it just wasn't. Yeah, he just could not let that go, like,
Yeah. And you'd
yeah.
sort of
So
think, like, I mean, again, not that I wish this upon anybody, and it's horrific what you've been through, but I would have thought, like, with what he did, would have happened back when you first broke up,
right,
not
absolutely.
not 6 months down the track, or like, or whatever it was.
Right.
Yeah, I don't understand that either. I mean, thank
And I
God.
think that's why it takes you off guard, because you're thinking, like, at that time he was explosive anger, he was obsessive, and I'm like, whoa, like, if
Yeah, yeah,
we need to take a break. And I was expecting kind of some kind of retaliation at that time, because I was like, he's not going to take this well, like this isn't. But no, it was quiet and it was calculated. It was just so quiet and calculated over that time, that does blow my mind, because he was just waiting. He was just thinking and brewing and waiting on it.
yeah.
um
Well, the whole
and you
thing,
don't
I mean,
expect that from people. You
yeah,
don't expect
no.
people to do that.
Well,
Yeah.
especially because he's always been or had always shown that he was really quite reactive. So
Yeah.
you would sort of think that once you'd ended that relationship, that the reaction that he's taken would have absolutely have happened there and then,
Right.
not
Yeah.
not down the track. But the best thing is that your son was away from the house at that particular point in time, and that
Yeah.
you were just absolutely smart enough to do what you did in, tapping that door handle, and just to basically, you'd worked it out and planned in this chaotic period of time how you were going to get out. Like, I mean, yeah, it definitely
Yeah.
is amazing, isn't it, when it comes down to that survival instinct, and just thinking of
Absolutely.
ways,
Yeah.
thinking of ways just to be able to get out. And I think that would have been also the hardest thing, especially to very confusing if you've got this same person who's going from being that they're crying and they're upset and I don't want to be doing this, to then all of a sudden coming through and being very calculated, like telling you that you're evil and very stone faced. Like, that would have been really difficult to have dealt
Yeah.
with too. I think it would have been
Yeah.
quite shocking in a way.
Yeah, it was like it's like dealing with two different people. There were two different people there, and you wanted the nice one to be there.
Yeah, yeah,
You wanted the emotional one. Yeah, I was always appealing to that one and just trying to keep him there in that moment. I do feel, I'm not a psychologist, but I do feel that his mind was split in that instance. That he really was acting in two different personalities. Whether that was calculated, I don't know if it was out. That's, these are the questions I have. Was it calculated alligator tears so that he seemed
yeah,
like he was being emotional and he was getting me to be, to cooperate, or was that really genuine? It's so
yeah,
hard. You kind of want to have a conversation. I always said this. I said afterwards, like years later, I want to have a conversation and I want to say, like, why?
yeah.
Like, why? Like, what happened? What was going through your head? What were you thinking? But you can't. You can't have that conversation with him because obviously you have to completely, you
And I
know,
and that is, I think, one of the hardest things, and especially with trying to get closure, is having those questions and just absolutely wanting to know the truth. And I know even for I
yeah,
mean, my situation's nothing compared to yours, but it becomes a bit frustrating because you have so many questions and you want to just basically know the truth. But unfortunately, sitting down with somebody like that, are you ever going to get the truth? Because the thing is, the power goes back to them, and then they can just
yeah,
play this game of just
yeah,
lying and stuff like that. So then it becomes even harder to prove. And I think even then, it would just become even more frustrating for yourself. So it would make it extremely, extremely difficult to,
yeah.
yeah, to
Yeah,
have, I
you just
guess,
have to come to terms that you are your closure, that you
yeah,
yourself will give yourself closure. Because, like you said, people like that cannot have a solid conversation
no,
about the why, because I honestly believe that they don't know why. They just are what they are. They just do what they do.
yeah,
And they can say all the reasons why, and they can say all these things because they think that's what you want to hear, or that's what's going to get you to play the game more.
yeah, true.
But no, I don't think they know themselves why. They
No,
just do it.
yeah, yeah. It's such an
Hmm.
interesting, I actually find it like the psychology side of it, I actually find it
Hmm.
really quite fascinating. But you're right, maybe at that particular point that they don't truly know why. And the other thing is, I mean, even with everything that you went through, he was still saying that it was your fault. So
Right.
even now, it would be interesting if you were to even had that conversation, that how much of it would this person absolutely sit there and still say, "Oh, it was all
Yeah.
your fault." So
Yeah, it would be an amazing conversation now because I've become a whole other person. I've grown so much, and it would just definitely
yeah,
it would be interesting. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
and it has to change you. Like this is the thing, like this stuff absolutely changes you. You were never ever going to be the same person that you were back then.
Right.
But the beautiful thing is that you have taken the time and the courage to truly heal you. And that is the most incredible thing in everything, is your journey of
Yeah.
healing yourself. And now, I mean, here you are, you're talking about your experience, you're sharing that with others in the hope that nobody else goes through what you have been through. And now, like, you've written your book, Girl That Got Out. So, which is just amazing. And here you are, advocating for others.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if anybody ever is in that, situation or anything, or just going through trauma, that's what I was like, you got to bring this to the table because it's a gift to be alive today.
Yeah.
I really truly 1,000,000% believe that it's a gift. I got to watch my son grow up, and that's that's just the greatest thing. It's the greatest thing ever. Like it's just there's not a bad day after that.
Yeah.
Um, but it's with a gift, I just feel like comes that responsibility where, you know, I can help other people, and maybe something that they hear or that they read will resonate with them in that moment, in any moment that they're going through or something like that, that it'll click or be in there. They'll be like, oh, that's, I can use that. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's too big to sit on.
It is. And what a huge story. But again, I think it also goes to show just how strong and how courageous and how brave you are in speaking and sharing your story because, you don't have to. I mean, it's absolutely your choice,
Yeah,
but you've
right.
chosen to share your story. And I think that it's just absolutely wonderful that you are doing that absolutely to help others because there's so many people who go through stuff all the time
Hmm.
and we see it, we hear it all the time. So I think it's just absolutely marvelous that you are absolutely doing that and advocating and sharing your story. So for anybody who wants to buy your book, where can they buy Girl That Got Out?
I have a website. It's www.girlthatgotout.com, or you can just go on Amazon. It's on Amazon.
Beautiful. And what I'll
Hmm.
do is when I go and I post up our podcast today, I will absolutely put the link in there for your book, your website, and your Amazon. So for
Awesome.
everybody who's listening, you can absolutely go and purchase RJ's book, Girl That Got Out. RJ, I just want to thank you so much for being so brave, for being so courageous, and just honestly connecting and sharing your story with us today. I just, yeah, I'm just incredibly grateful that you are absolutely here with us and absolutely sharing your
Woohoo!
story. Like, oh my goodness, what an ordeal. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the work that you do on healing women. Just you understand the mind games and you understand the psychology between in the abuse and just and the things that we struggle through. And you're bringing light to all of it, and it's amazing, and I love it.
Thank you.
So
Thank
thanks.
you. And I think
Mhm.
probably one of the biggest things actually just before we sign off and you said it,
Mhm.
so it's the calculation. And that is
Yes.
something that honestly that has really come to light, even for myself and for my own journey, is the level of calculation. Like
Yeah.
you sit back and I think, you know what, I think it's exhausting just dealing day to day, like trying to think of, what we've got
Yeah,
going on.
exactly. Like nobody's calculating. Normal people are not calculating how they can make somebody else, suffer or miserable or
Exactly.
yeah.
Like it's just
Uh
it blows my
it's
mind.
control, it's power and control,
Yes,
and that they have a serious problem with power and control. It's the same with a rapist, with
absolutely.
serial rapists. It's a power and control thing, and they just can't beat it.
No, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. Like it really
Hmm.
is. And it does always come back down to the level of control is just
Yeah.
incredible. But yeah,
Hmm.
it really does. I guess scammy is the word as to how calculating everything is and yeah, the length that they go to. So yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Incredible. So, oh,
Yeah.
anyway, thank you once again for joining the podcast of Rise Up and Heal. We just so appreciate you and thank
Yeah.
God that you are still with us and that you are absolutely out there sharing your story and advocating for all of us. So, thank you.
Yes. Thank you for having me.